Welcome to Clemson Extension Live. In today's program, we'll be discussing plants with medicinal properties. And before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone watching this broadcast is that the information that we provide today is for educational purposes only. Please always consult your physician or another medical professional regarding any kind of specific health concerns or issues that you may have. So today, if I had to describe it in one sentence, it's a discussion of the healing power of plants. We're going to be discussing an upcoming conference which is going to be held at Clemson University from June 20th to 23rd, and it is being sponsored by the American Council for Medicinally Active Plants, or otherwise known as ACMAP. And the primary purpose of this council is to promote and foster research, development, production, and conservation of medicinal, aromatic, and other bioactive plants that are important to human health. And so before I forget as well, I like to think sometimes that Clemson Extension Live is all about me. It's not. It's about you. And we really want to hear from you, comments, opinions, questions. We've got a lot of expertise that we're unrolling probably over the next hour. So please email your questions to us. Go directly to our Clemson Extension Live Facebook page and put your comments right there on that page. Now, I have to introduce my friend and colleague next to me, co-host of this conference, who also serves as the council secretary, is my friend and colleague, Clemson University professor, Dr. Jeff Adelberg. Dr. Adelberg, welcome to the program.
Thank you for doing this, Bob. Again, it's a very enjoyable subject for me to discuss, and again, I'm very glad that you called me in for this today.
Now, before we get into the plants in this program, I really feel it's important, Jeff. I've known you for quite some time, and if I could rattle off your experience as a horticulturist, as a plantsman, as a plant physiologist, a scientist who conducts research in micropropagation or in tissue culture, as well as with medicinal plants. And so with regard to this particular conference, I really feel that before we get into the medicinal plants aspect, but just to look at medicinal plants from a historical standpoint, and as I had done a little bit of research with regard to studying about medicinal plants relative to this conference, I've known since probably about 8000 BC that plants have been traded, bought, sold for agriculture as well as medicinal purposes. But then eventually over time, the ornamental attributes of plants came to light. But I would like you to give us just a little bit more or a dimension with regard to plants and their medicinal properties from way back and now into the present, where we still have this active interest in learning more about these plant factories.
Yeah, it's very interesting to learn that all cultures had plant compounds identified that would help in their healing needs. And the cultures of Asia, India, and China famously have thousands of years of tradition. The Chinese wrote before the Indians, and so 5000 BC or so, there's a written pharmacopoeia with 180 plants. All, or almost all, are still in use. The Chinese pharmacopoeia is now up to a couple thousand plants. It just gets added and added. The Indians were probably practicing medicine every bit as long, but they didn't write until maybe 4,000 years later. And yet, again, their skills as surgeons and plantsmen are very well known. And again, they are given credit with early medical systems that are still used. The Western tradition mostly came through the Greeks. Hippocrates, of course, the father of medicine, had a plant pharmacopoeia of about 500 plants. And he is quoted as saying, and I believe the quote is accurate, is "Let thy food be thy medicine." Now, our Western plant medical tradition was interrupted during the Dark Ages. So where India and China remained intact, ours is been somewhat truncated and restarted. We can also look at the Native Americans. They had a traditional medicinal culture. And again, as we understand how the Native American history in North America and South America was interrupted by European intervention, their medicinal cultures were also somewhat abrupted. Africa also has had their cultures again somewhat obscured by the sands of time. And so India and China very much intact. The rest of the world, they have traditions, and how they've been unearthed or reinvigorated by modern people all becomes very interesting stories. And I found an article in the New York Times on Sunday that again gave current credence to things I've been aware of for a long time. But actually, many mammals self-medicate, and so they self-medicate with herbs that they find, and they only use them when they're sick. They don't go for them when they're well because they're bitter. And so this idea of using plants as medicines certainly is common to humans, but may not be unique to humans, which again is just a very interesting context to put this all in.
Now, Jeff, bringing us to the present here with regard to this 8th annual conference of the American Council for Medicinally Active Plants. Kind of give us an overview of the many tracks that are available during this conference. Growers, scientists, all converging at Clemson University to study these medicinally active plants and compounds.
Yeah, if we were to make a new American tradition based upon plants of North America, wisdom of North America, immigrant people and their plants, modern science, traditional wisdom, if we're going to make a new American medicinal culture, we have to talk to people in all these fields. And academic disciplines are very much bubbles. I talk to people that do what I do, and that's how I get to be an expert. And if you think of all the different expertise that has to align to make medicinal plants useful, effective, safe, available, and integrate with a medical system that involves doctors, hospitals, pharmacies, and insurance, a lot of people that understand things differently have to talk to one another. And so our group is broadly structured and allows time for us to learn from one another and time for us to speak to one another. So hopefully this new American pharmacopoeia indeed can develop and reflect our joint wisdom and values.
And so if you could give us just a general overview of some of the presentations that would be made during this June 20th to 23rd timeframe.
Okay, well, again, a longtime friend and colleague, Jim Simon from Rutgers, has a fantastic program where he breeds plants, he does analytical chemistry, and he brings people from Africa back to his lab at Rutgers so they can learn exactly what's involved to produce the chemistries and to prepare the products, and with USAID programs gets African companies established so they can have the benefit of their own value-added evidence-based medicine. So Jim heads off out of Africa. We have several growers in the afternoon that again speak about their farms and plantations. We have some of the largest processors of herbs and purchasers of herbs talking about what it is they look for in the marketplace. This runs concurrent with scientific sessions that talk about how the principal compounds function in the human body to do things like anti-inflammatory responses, to do things that are antibiotic, antimicrobial, to do things, again, that have wound healing and, again, a good performance on, again, your skin and your skin health. And then we roll on to, again, topics that, again, deal more with, again, the functional foods and topics that deal more with making precision medicines and some of the environmental control devices that we use in production so that the qualities of the plant from nature are best presented, again, when it comes time to harvest a crop and process a crop. We finish with some healers that come from Chinese, Indian, and Native American traditions, because again, that's where it all started. Maybe that's where it should all end.
Now, while I want our viewers to remain on this Facebook page, you do have the program available also on Facebook as well
Yes.
at acmap.org, acmap.org. Very good. So what I would like to do is you had the opportunity to visit Gaia Farms, one of the presenters at the conference in Brevard, North Carolina. And I'm hoping these folks could they cue the tape, and let's go take a look at your visit at Gaia Farms.
Here we are at Gaia Herbs on the banks of the French Broad River outside of Brevard, North Carolina. 350 acres of beautiful organic farmland. They grow 35 or 40 varieties of healing herbs in a season. They grow, they process, and sell under their own name, Gaia Herbs. Again, some very fine materials as people would use them to help promote health and healing. Beautiful soil, beautiful farm, and again, a great place to be on a spring afternoon. So here we are in a field of purple coneflower, Echinacea purpurea. Gardeners certainly know this plant because of the beautiful purple daisy-like flowers that'll bloom all through the heat of the summer. North American native, you find this plant in pastures and old fields scattered here and about. A plant that was used as a medicinal by the Native Americans, and again, people use it currently to this day as again, an immune booster, a cold suppressant. A great thing about this plant is again, it grows really well, really beautiful, and yet it's something where the common wisdom in what to do with it depends upon the people you ask. Some people use the roots, some people use the tops, some people make teas, and with a modern science, we've even learned that it may be a fungus that lives inside the plant that elicits the potent chemistries that we like, as opposed to just the plant by itself. And again, there are several classes of chemicals that make this plant work. They're biochemically not even entirely related, so it's unlikely if you were to take one synthetic chemical that you would get the effect of echinacea. So consuming an extract of the whole plant, or consuming an extract of the root, or even mixing root and top may be necessary for that desired effect. With all that said, it's kind of no wonder that people have a hard time making a pharmaceutical medicine from what we know through folklore and wisdom works as an herb, because there are so many chemicals involved, and it may not be the plant itself without the fungus. And again, if anything is to be made a drug, they like to have a single chemical where the whole physiological effect of that chemical in the human body is known, and the chemistry here just defies that kind of simple answer. It takes echinacea a couple years to come to the size where the roots and the flowers are big enough to be harvested. So whereas we looked at a field that's 2 years old and coming to maturity this season, this field was just planted a week or two ago, and it'll be next year before it's harvested. Now, the one thing that you ought to keep in mind is you have to keep these plants clean and free of weeds for that whole time it's in the ground. And again, because this is an organic production system without the use of weed killers, there is a lot of mechanical cultivation that goes into keeping this field clean. So again, you may think, why, geez, I could just grow a big field of echinacea and replace my tomatoes or my squash. But believe me, again, there's a lot of good hard work, a lot of good back work that goes into keeping a field this clean.
Jeff, that was a beautiful piece. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around the fact that these plants not only have ornamental value, but medicinal value as well. And so you took us through the growing part. How about taking us to the harvesting? I understand that we've got some B-roll from Gaia Herbs, and it deals with the harvesting of a number of these crops. And I thought you could provide us with some details once they run the videotape on that harvesting. And then we'll follow that up with preparing this harvested material into a form that can be used by consumers. And so as we wait for that, I would just like to say that at the symposium or at this meeting will be Bill Chiaffi from Gaia Herbs, and he will be talking about the vertical integration from farm to harvest of their herbs. So let's take a look at this video, and if you would just give us a voiceover with regard to what this gentleman is doing in the field, harvesting a number of their medicinal plants.
Yeah, it looks like they're working on California poppy. And again, it's the root of the perennial plant, almost like a carrot, except unlike a carrot, the root is not quite as large. And again, you have to get all the soil off before the thing can be washed. And when you realize that this is going to be a medicine, it has to be clean. And if you realize it's been sitting in the soil over years of time, it's anything but clean. Now, harvesting the Echinacea tops, oh, you saw that a minute ago, harvesting the Echinacea tops are cleaner than roots, okay? And so every herb that is harvested, getting clean material and cleaning it and drying it. If you use water to clean it, it has to be dried. Then again, you think about insects, you think about weeds, you think about fungal organisms that may get in, you think about insects that may get to silage. So again, doing all this is a real skill.
And Jeff, when I looked at the labor-intensive nature of this, it just seems just a lot of manual labor required to produce this clean product. But also, I had wondered when I look across that field, how do you maintain the quality of the active ingredients, whether it's in the root of the poppy or in the above-ground parts of the Echinacea? How do you manage that?
The metaphor I like, it comes from the wine section of the store. If you were to pick up a bottle of wine, it's Vitis vinifera, 12% alcohol by volume. It's all the same species, it's all the same product. No. There are flavors and colors and supportive chemistries that confer other things to the wine's experience in the human body besides the 12% alcohol active ingredient in Vitis vinifera and the fungal organism that allowed it to happen.
Very good point.
So don't think that medicinal plant culture should be or could be simpler than wine culture, and realize that the quality of the growers, the quality of the processors, and this label on the species confers a lot.
Excellent point. One thing I couldn't help, but I'm sure you were noticing this as well. Did you see how rich that soil looked? How the black organic nature of that soil?
Yeah, Gaia Herbs, I believe, is again, they started in Massachusetts. They chose this site in North Carolina on the French Broad River because it has beautiful alluvial depositions. It has a long growing season. And again, the climate and the soil is carefully selected. You look at where medicinal plant growers are in the world, it's the lowlands of the mountains that have the beautiful soils, the beautiful climates. And again, sometimes these are remote locations in the interiors of Asia. And again, right, you find your best special places for these special crops.
So Jeff, as they queue up the next video, where we've gone through the harvesting process and now preparing this product that had been cultivated in soil, making it available in a form that can be used by the consumer. And so we're going to run some B-roll again from Gaia Herbs, thanks to them, and we'd love to hear your voiceover on this.
Okay, well, honestly, I am not actively involved in the manufacture of pills and oils. But basically what you're doing is you're taking some dried herb and you're mixing it with a starch matrix so it can become a consumed pill. And that way it's stable in an environment over years' time. Now, some things are better extracted in oils or ethanol. If they're in ethanol, they'd be in a dropper bottle in a tincture, and then you'd put a few drops in a tea or in a food product. If they're in oil, they would come in a gel capsule. And this way, any of the complex products can remain stable on the shelf over time. And if you're consuming this with a health-related outcome, you can have confidence that out of season and in a region that's distant to the production, you're getting every time you need it exactly what you're looking for. So the other day I did consume some Echinacea extract, and I don't know if it was grown a year ago or 2 years ago. It's not ready to be harvested now, but because it was extracted in oil, put in that gel cap, I knew that the potencies of that field cultivation were conserved as well as we know how.
Wonderful. Jeff, thank you so much for the information you provide about Gaia herbs and the whole production process there. You brought some material here on this desk of what to me look like common houseplants or perennials that we would enjoy in our garden. One of my favorite herbs, of course, is garlic. But let's talk about some of the material that you brought here before we go to our guest who's waiting for us on the phone.
Right. Everything you see here came from my yard today, or my kitchen today. And these are all plants that we use routinely in the house. They've all been consumed in the past week. And some of them have culinary properties, it's true. But we use these all in my household also with the healing properties or the health promoting properties that they have in store. I'll start with, again, an excellent plant is turmeric. And turmeric is the yellow powder in curry. And in Asia, people eat this every day. You know, a reason why there are 1 billion people that live in India before refrigeration and before medicines is they had things like turmeric that went along with rice and went along with lentils. And again, it provided, anti-parasitic, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and good blood chemistry properties, and anti-cancer properties. And these people knew it before they even knew what cancer was.
That is so aromatic.
Right.
Oh, my goodness.
Here, so
I am not going to taste it.
You don't have to taste it, but this powder is the dried rhizome, and it's very heavy in resin. Okay?
Oh, my.
Now, the root, or the rhizome, the fresh rhizome, has oils that are not in the powder. Okay? And so when you break this open, it smells a lot more like pine, or it smells a lot more like camphor.
Yes.
And it has a very different group of properties that are not in the dry powder. As a matter of fact, I have a doctor, a colleague friend from Brown University, who has a patent on gout in the fresh, not in the dry compound, and that novelty is what allowed it to be patented. So there are terpenes and oils that are in the fresh rhizome that are not in the powdered rhizome. By the way, this is a turmeric plant from my yard, and it's doing exactly what it would be doing this time of year, which is sending up its sprout. And turmeric is a tropical, semi-tropical plant. It does not belong in Clemson, South Carolina. It's very slow to come up. But again, you can see what a young turmeric plant would look like. This is the harvested portion. This is the new lead coming out. And the dried powders are stable, but there are certain properties that are lost. And again, we're learning how these complex mixtures can be used. And if you were to just do your research on this powder on gout, you'd wind up with a 0 because you lost the oil.
How about moving right along to my favorite?
Well, garlic, stores sucrose underground in the soil. And if you were a rat or a worm or a bacteria or a fungus and you found sucrose laying around in the soil, you'd say, great day. But there are sulfur-containing compounds that prevent predation. They're antimicrobial. They're again, they prevent, these little worms from wanting to feed. And so we consume in small quantities what prevents these smaller organisms from consuming the plant. And the antibacterial properties of these sulfur-containing compounds are absolutely fantastic. And a lot of our sulfur-based antibiotics have very similar chemistries to the sulfur-containing compounds in garlic.
And how about our wonderful flowering perennial?
Okay. In my yard, the Echinacea purpurea that's taller is not flowering yet. So I bought in a shorter ornamental. And you can see this is the first year it's a 1 year old. You'd harvested at 2. And it's just starting to develop some of the larger roots that would contain the alkaloids. And so the root has to be cleaned. And again, cleaning a root like this is much harder than cleaning a carrot. Okay?
Undoubtedly a fibrous root system, yes.
Right. Now, again, the tips get snapped off. They get harvested at a different age. And so we have two different species, purpurea and angustifolia, that get consumed. And the roots and tops get consumed. And depending upon the properties you're looking for, you'd use tops or bottoms of either species. And there is good research that shows actually it may be fungus that colonizes the plant that induces some of these chemistries to happen. So again, it's hard to imagine figuring out in a human physiology disease fighting mode what is going on.
Well, Jeff, I am just so overwhelmed and so proud to love plants, because when I think about these compounds, these are essentially like secondary metabolites. These are compounds the plant is using perhaps as a form of protection. And somehow we're able to tap into that, take advantage of the plant investing carbohydrate, not in producing more leaves and flowers, but in producing these compounds as a way of perhaps inhibiting predation. But it's kind of neat how we rely on plants for our own chemistry. Now, the last one that I feel that people are very familiar with are houseplant or aloe vera. And I was hoping that you could talk about that and maybe take off a section of the leaf and discuss that the gooiness that exudes from these very fleshy, succulent leaves.
Right. So aloe vera grows in the arid regions of the world. I think it's a native to South Africa or South India, but it grows very commonly throughout that whole band of the world. And in the desert, the plant has to protect its water. Okay? So the water is wrapped in a gel, and that gel allows the plant to draw down water resource when it needs it, but it's exceedingly bitter. Again, have you ever tasted aloe gel?
No, I haven't had the good fortune of doing that.
Put your finger on it and touch it to your tongue. It's very bitter. Right.
Honestly, I didn't get enough of that. I'm afraid to. But I trust you that it is bitter.
Right.
Good. I should trust you. I've known you for over 20 years.
You would not go back for a second bite.
No.
And so the plant is protecting its water. Okay, now, I don't know why, but this gel is very good at skin healing.
Yes, it is.
And sunburn. It feels great. It actually relieves some of the minor rashes and irritation. Also, if you consume the part that's right under the leaf, not the center, and you usually mix it with honey because it's so bitter, but you consume it as a juice. People buy aloe vera juice, and it's good for their gut. It helps to cleanse their gut.
Okay.
Okay, it fights the bad guys. It helps to aid in voiding because the fibers in here are very good at inducing that. And so if you have lower GI distress, consuming the juices in a preventative manner has given a lot of people good relief. So again, as a topical as well as juice, and you see aloe vera juice sold in health food stores in many, many countries, U.S. included.
Wonderful, Jeff. I just want to remind our viewers as well, as we go into 30 minutes of this program, that we began the program, and throughout the program, we will be talking about this American Council for Medicinally Active Plants. It's the 8th annual conference will be held here at Clemson University, June 20th to the 23rd. And it's just really all about the healing power of plants. And I thought this was kind of fun for you to bring plants from your backyard, turmeric that you had worked on and published papers on that particular herb. It was fun hearing about that. What I think is going to be really great is the guest that we have on the phone with us joining us, and I believe Dr. Mark Hammond may be calling us from his office in Charleston. Now, with Dr. Hammond, he is an endowed chair in drug discovery at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. Dr. Hammond, I hope you're joining us on the phone right now.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful, Dr. Hammond. Well, let me just take a brief moment to talk a little bit about you. Dr. Hammond is the Carol and Charles Cooper Endowed Chair of Pharmacy, and he's also the Smart State Endowed Chair in the Center of Economic Excellence in Drug Discovery. He's an internationally recognized expert in the area of natural product drug discovery. So as I've scoured the internet learning more about Dr. Hammond, I find that he, in my words, is the Indiana Jones of drug discovery. And this fellow goes throughout the countryside. Well, throughout the countryside, what am I saying? He is looking at plants in terrestrial environments and marine environments and just looking at some of the interesting organisms that he has looked at, not only sycamore trees, but also algae, deep sea sponges, searching for drugs that have medicinal as well as therapeutic value. So Dr. Hammond, I just hope I didn't bore you too much, that you're still with me on the phone. And what I would like you to talk to us, the viewers, about your work, the process involved in seeking out these products and bringing these drugs to the market. Can you give us a kind of a bird's eye view of that process?
Sure. So, like you had discussed earlier, plants as well as bacteria and marine samples produce a wide diversity of secondary metabolites that have utility in the control of disease. In fact, historically, about 75% of our antibiotics are natural products, and 4 of the 8 most frequently prescribed drugs for cancer are natural products, and 3 of those 4 come from different plants. In fact, the most frequently used drug to treat cancer is paclitaxel, which came from the Pacific yew tree, which is a rare or endangered tree that produces a very complex and very unique inhibitor of microtubule formation. So the process involves collecting unique samples from the environment and then starting with an extract and screening it for biological activity, and then systematically purifying the active material until we have a purified organic molecule that we can characterize using a wide variety of spectroscopic tools. And that is, of course, has historically been very successful, and we have certainly every reason to believe that we'll continue to be very successful in the future.
Well, Dr. Hammond, just looking at it from a plant perspective, I believe there are, 800,000 species of plants. And then, my gosh, I can't even wrap my mind around bacteria and algae and also marine life. But so how do you go about making these discoveries? I can't imagine that you would sample everything. But then when I think about also these secondary metabolites, trying to tease apart all of these compounds to find that, is it a singular compound or is it a number of compounds that work synergistically? it's kind of hard for me to imagine the amount of effort and people required to reveal some of the secrets that are in nature.
Yes, well, it certainly is. It is labor intensive and time consuming. Certainly, the technologies that are now available using metabolomics or mass spec to help screen and dereplicate materials helps to expedite the process and allows us to focus on new chemical entities. So those tools certainly help to improve the process of identifying new potential therapeutics. And then there are challenges as far as production of sufficient quantities. We are currently studying an antibiotic. Actually, it's perhaps one of the first antibiotics characterized from plants, from the leaves of the American sycamore tree. And we are evaluating that as a really interesting and promising control for drug-resistant infectious diseases like MRSA, which is methicillin-resistant staph, and vancomycin-resistant staph and enterococcus.
Dr. Hammond, we've got gardeners that are watching this program, and when I read about the discovery of the sycamore containing these compounds, I was curious, first of all, to know, how in the world did you pick this plant, sycamore? I mean, when I think about visiting Charleston, I remember seeing along the Battery, you've got these pollarded, and I believe those are London planes related to the sycamore. But with sycamores, this is a wonderful Native American species. How in the world did this tree become a superstar with regard to its properties as a medicinal plant?
Well, it started with, perhaps a little bit of a random screening approach. We had a visiting scholar from the Middle East that was interested in looking at North American plants, and so we did a collection of a small number and screened them for biological activity. And it turned out that sycamore leaves and twigs or branches were active against drug-resistant staph. And then there is some interesting precedence in the sort of Native American literature, where the Native Americans used sycamore to treat GI distress or infections. And so the combination of that information have helped it move forward.
I had just spoken to Dr. Adelberg about your role in the creation of this 8th annual conference for the American Council for Medicinal Active Plants. Jeff, did you want to make a comment about that?
Yeah, again, Mark was contacted early on in the conference formation, and he's brought in 6 or 7 different speakers around his core area so that, again, we can broadly view how, plant and natural product produced chemistries can be validated and brought up to the level of consideration to be used as pharmaceutical compounds. So again, Mark is instrumental in getting a very strong core into the program. So again, pharmaceutical chemistry can be well represented in this broad range of medicinally active plants. And again, Mark, I'm looking very forward to hosting your group up here in a couple weeks on campus. It's going to be one of the highlights of convening this meeting. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, well, thank you. We certainly are looking forward to participating in the meeting, and it looks like a fantastic venue and a really great program.
And Dr. Hammond, I'd like just to close our brief interview and just thanking you for all of your hard work and the many teams that you work with in extracting these natural compounds and making them available. And I trust that you've helped so many people. You've given so many people hope as well with your work. And so we're just very fortunate to catch you in your office at this time. I believe last week we were trying to track you down, and I'm not sure if you were somewhere in the deep south, out in the field somewhere, but it's been a pleasure learning about the work that you're doing in the development of these new drugs that are available to patients worldwide. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, and that was Dr. Mark Hammond. He is the Carol and Charles Cooper Endowed Chair of Pharmacy and the Smart State Endowed Chair in the Center of Economic Excellence for Drug Discovery. He is a professor of drug discovery, biomedical sciences, and public health at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. So we're very fortunate to have him there. And Jeff, we were talking about the medicinal plants, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to barely taste your aloe. And I'm not that interested in consuming it, but more as a topical application.
Bob, it's still bothering me on my tongue.
Okay, so
you made the right choice.
Something that I really enjoy is consuming food. As a gourmand, I've had the good fortune of interviewing one of our friends and colleagues, Dr. Dil Thavaraja. And with Dr. Dil, as you know, Jeff, she is a plant physiologist in the Plant Environmental Sciences Department here at Clemson University. She studies vegetable quality and nutrition. And I had the good fortune of interviewing Dil in a recording that we had made yesterday. And I would just like to say, as you watch this tape, feel the passion, enthusiasm that this scientist has in addressing obesity issues, but also in addressing micronutrient malnutrition. And so it's really kind of interesting with her program that she's also involved in doing traditional breeding work of trying to infuse these nutrient-dense vegetables with iron, selenium, and zinc. And so you can see from this videotape what Dr. Dil Thavaraja is doing with regard to lentils and kale. Let's run that tape. Dil, thank you so much for joining me today. You're going to be speaking at this upcoming conference, and it's been a pleasure knowing you over the past few years in your work as a plant physiologist, but also your study of pulse crops. And with your work, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with regard to biofortification of some of the plants that we have right here on the table with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been working with lentil for almost 10 years right after my PhD. My PhD also about pulse crops, the physiology, to study how we can increase the nitrogen fixation, because pulse crops are nitrogen fixing legumes that provide...
Give us an idea of what do you mean by pulse crops? How about some of the crops?
Oh, right. The pulse crops are legumes because all the pulse crops are classified as legumes, but all the legumes are not pulse crops. Pulse is the word came from the old Latin meaning porridge or pulse. Its meaning is the porridge because 11,000 years ago people eat these pulses as a porridge. It was written in the Bible as well as in the different types of scripts from 8,500 years ago. So that's why it's called as pulses. So lentils, peas, chickpeas, and beans, they classified as the pulse crops. Most pulse crops are cool season because they required cool season, cool temperature, cool weather, rainfall to grow them. So
tell me, Dil, your interest in lentils, in these pulse crops, why?
Well, I am originally from Sri Lanka. Believe it or not, we grow up eating lentils 3 times a day. That is our staple food in Sri Lanka. So most people eat rice and lentils. So lentil is called as poor man's meat because that's the vegetarian protein. This wonderful crop has about 30%, that means there are 20 to 30 gram of protein in 100 gram of cooked lentils. So that's why it is called as a poor man meat. And all these people live in Southeast Asia. Their staple diet is pulses, lentils, chickpea, beans, things like that. But I grew up with lentils eating, and then I moved to Canada to do my higher education. And then without knowing, I become a physiologist and studying on how to improve the nutrition quality of these things to feed the people back in my countries like Southeast Asia.
And you're mentioning lentils. Sadly, I have never seen a lentil plant before. I've seen the packaged lentils, and we're going to talk about those shortly. But I will tell you, as a horticulturist, lentil is a beautiful plant. And so let's take a look at this pear.
Yes.
And I just love, and since as a horticulturist, I look at the finely dissected foliage here.
Right.
It is beautiful, and it's all herbaceous.
Yes.
And then here you say, as a cool season crop,
Right.
in fact, you spent your morning harvesting harvesting some kale.
We were harvesting some kale
As
in
well as
Logan.
lentils?
No, these are not ready yet to harvest, but these will be ready very soon. You can still see some of the flowers in there.
And also the pods themselves.
Yes, and which has 2 seeds in there.
And so I'm looking at this.
This
In order to fill that bag.
Yes. Oh, that would be a lot of lentils.
Oh my.
So roughly 1,500 kilograms per hectare. That's around the yield per hectare. This is a pretty good crop, but sadly, in South Carolina, we cannot grow this because, as I said, it requires the Mediterranean type of weather.
Okay.
So I don't know whether you know this, the most red lentil produced in the world is from Saskatchewan, Canada. That's where I went to school.
And gee whiz, and I think
90% of the red lentil produced in Canada, but now U.S. we are the 4th most producing country in the world. North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Idaho pollute Washington State.
oh my.
I used to work in North Dakota. They established a pulse quality program, nation's first quality program I established there before I moved to Clemson, because that's the country where we grow lentils.
So in the upper Midwest, so this is not something that a backyard gardener would even consider growing.
I don't think for South Carolina, but you can have other crops similar to lentils like beans and field peas, and you can have vegetable peas. Cowpea is one of the best one growing south.
Now, with regard to the lentil, this crop looks fine, but you feel that you could add a little bit more oomph to it, in the sense that perhaps adding some other minerals that are
Right.
necessary for our diet.
Yes, so my research program is about the biofortification. What we do is we looked at the conventional plant breeding techniques to increase the iron, zinc, carotenoids, and selenium, folate, and beta carotene. So right now these plants are actually grown. These are not the current varieties grown in the North Dakota, Montana, or anywhere in the U.S. These were lentil accessions came from USDA germplasm laboratory, and I am selecting for high selenium uptake lentil lines. So these were grown in the greenhouse. So these are a little different than the common cultivated lentils because these are accessions very close to the common varieties farmers grow, but little different because we were looking at the genomic side of the plant. So that's nutrition genomic. That's a new platform that we're going to establish in the Clemson University. So,
And I should have asked you this earlier, but your interest in pulse crops, in biofortification, my understanding of that term is that you're increasing levels of minerals, like you had said, with regard to the selenium.
right.
And so, what is the overarching drive that you have for vegetables? Because I've known you for quite some time, and you are so passionate about diet and people.
Yeah.
Please tell me about that.
So 2 things I work on is one is the micronutrient malnutrition. Other thing is the other side of the curve is the obesity. So about 200 million, maybe like the half of the world population is micronutrient malnutrition or like iron zinc deficient or carotenoid deficient. Mostly these people live in Southeast Asia or Africa. So there is a project funded by Gates Foundation, and they established this NGO or the platform called Harvest Plus. Their goal is to breed crops with iron, zinc, and carotenoids. And lentil were also part of their project, and which I work with the international agency in Morocco. It's called ICARDA. They are the ones actually working on a lot of this international research. So their idea is to release the varieties with high iron and zinc. So I work with the breeder in Morocco. We already released about 10 to 15 varieties. He did that. So most of the phenotyping work has been done in my lab. And similar aspect we do it with the U.S. breeders to increase the iron and zinc, because we want to feed the South Asian people, because whatever we produce here in United States, we export it to Southeast Asia. That's our consumers. So we want to make the best product for our consumers. So the other side of the coin is the obesity. So about 30% of the American population is obese at the moment, and we expect the numbers going to be double in 2050. So how we can find a food-based solution to prevent the obesity? So one of my graduate students, who is a medical student at the moment in the Mayo Medical School, so we started a project looking at what is low digestible carbohydrate, what it does to the body, what are the food enriched with low digestible carbohydrate. So we found a kind of a gold mine. Lentil has about like 15 to 20 grams of low digestible carbohydrate, or also known as prebiotic carbohydrate, in 100 gram of lentil. So eating that provide the low digestible carbohydrate mean it release the glucose very slowly, and it feed the bacteria. It makes you lean and healthy and wealthy.
Outstanding. I love
That's what we do.
that. So we go from the plant, and we saw the beautiful flattened pods that have the two seeds in them, and this is the product of these two accessions that you have here.
Right.
Look at these other colorful ones, and I'm just wondering, if my children were young, I think they would really get into these various colors.
Right. So
Clemson orange, my goodness.
I know. So these are the common market classes grown in USA, and these are the ones that we produce here in the USA, and then we export it to the different countries. Southeast Asia, especially the country where I was born in, Sri Lanka, is this one, the Hull Red Split. So if you see that, you can see the two different cotyledon. Mm-hmm. It is different from this. This one has like a football. It was not split. You can see the embryo. But
Correct.
Here you can see these pieces of embryo.
Okay.
So this is the whole seed, okay, with the seed coat. Once it remove the seed coat, it's called as the football. And then once you split it, it's a split red lentil. This is the kind that Sri Lankans like to eat.
Beautiful.
And this is the kind the Bangladeshi and most Indians like to eat. And this is everywhere people like to put it. I know Americans like this. This is what we put in our lentil soup.
Dill, I realize this is not the Food Network.
I know.
But we need to talk about this in the preparation, just briefly. I've had lentil burgers.
Oh, yeah.
I've had lentil soup.
Right.
It's really delicious.
Yes.
How do you prepare yours?
Mine, do you want to see it?
I'm thankful that you're going to open up that Tupperware container.
You want to smell it?
Oh, my gosh. I smell some curry in there.
Exactly. That is... So that is this football red lentils. So what I did, it took me only 10 minutes to prepare it. I had some water, garlic, onion, cinnamon, and a little bit of ginger, and then cook with the curry powder and chili pepper.
May I?
Yes, you try.
So I'm wondering, this is my bowl, and that's your bowl.
No,
Have at it.
And I had some spinach.
Goodness.
You should try it. It take only 10 minutes to cook for it, and then you can eat that with rice, or you can eat that with
Oh, that is outstanding. Now, there are about 5 other people out behind those cameras, and we're going to have to arm wrestle for this bowl. This is really delicious.
So people,
it's got a little bit of heat, too.
Yeah, because it's I add a little bit of chili pepper into it, because I know that you like chili. So if you eat that with the rice or hummus, this is how people eat it. Like in Sri Lanka, I eat that with the rice. That's my main meal.
That's wonderful. Oh, my. And I love that little bit of heat in the back.
I
Golly.
need some water.
Wow, we need Guy Ferretti over here. No, we don't. We're good without him. Let's take a look now at another crop.
Okay.
This is our kale.
This is actually
And you just harvested it this morning?
my graduate students
Look
actually.
how beautiful.
So what we're doing here, this is 6 different varieties of kale. We are looking for the highest dietary fiber varieties. So if you go to the market, you usually see which one? You tell me, Bob.
What I sometimes will see on a restaurant, this will be a garnish.
Okay.
I've been growing this one. I call it dinosaur kale. I've been
Right.
growing it as an ornamental, but I've been harvesting it
Right.
and eating it as well. I don't do much of the shopping in my house,
So-
but I'm guessing would it be this one,
That is red Russian, but you don't see that in the market very much.
the curly?
Yes, you see this one. So we were having like about 20 range from 10 to 25 different varieties we collected all over the United States, and then we wanted to look at how much dietary fiber in it, because the obesity is a major problem in the US. So if we can provide a diet rich in dietary fiber, like I said before, the prebiotic carbohydrate, or mix with lentil and kale, provide a whole food. So that's why I wanted to study what would be the match with the lentils to enhance the nutrition quality. Because if you think about America, people might not like to eat only lentils. They might like to have a salad in the side. So kale would be the best crop for that. It's already known as the superfood, but there is not very limited nutrition quality data. We just published a paper on 25 different varieties, and we looked at the mineral composition and the dietary fiber. Dietary fiber mean not just dietary fiber, range of dietary fiber, sugar, alcohol, raffinose, oligosaccharide, and the other prebiotic carbohydrate components, and the lignin, things like that. And then what we found was this crop can provide at least 2 to 5 gram of protein in 100 gram. You never thought about that. And it is low energy, and which is a high dense calcium, magnesium, and potassium. It also okay source of iron and zinc. Not an excellent source, but it has certain amount of iron, and it's a good source of iron and zinc, but excellent source of calcium, magnesium, and potassium, and the dietary fiber. So because I wanted to complement my lentil research program, so I kind of mixed these two together, and
They're
we are
all
looking
gorgeous.
for genetic sites and trying to screen for high lines or release. Maybe near future I should be able to have varieties rich in all these nutrients.
That's just wonderful. And again, as I commented on the lentils, when I look at this, all of these plants are landscape worthy.
Yeah,
right?
right,
And
right.
I can't help but say that. And
Yeah.
I've grown. I mean, I just love that. The term is rugose, that beautiful wrinkled leaf to it.
These are 2 different types of varieties. You never thought that, right?
Oh my!
These are 2 different types of
And
varieties.
it had been described to me as almost looks like the back of an alligator or a crocodile.
Right. These are called dinosaur.
Dinosaur kale.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And even these are 2 different varieties.
And so this is the time that I really feel it's important for people viewing this broadcast is to be aware that you don't have to have a vegetable garden in the back 40 somewhere to
Right.
cultivate these.
No.
Grow them in containers,
Right.
mix them up with ornamental plants in the foundation planting. I think we need to let our neighbors know that we could mix vegetables or edibles with our ornamental plants.
Exactly. And also, if you have a raised bed, you can have different types of kale. Also, don't forget your legumes, because legumes, as I said before, it fixes the nitrogen. So that is
And explain that, please.
Legumes take up nitrogen from the air, and it has this little nodules in the root, which has a rhizobium. It's a bacteria. So bacteria take that nitrogen and convert into ammonia. That ammonia used by the plant. So we don't need to add fertilizer into the plant. Plant just make its own nitrogen. So
Isn't that,
how
that's
wonderful.
very sweet.
Exactly.
And you explained it perfectly. Even though you used a 3-syllable word, rhizobium, that's fine. I'm glad you mentioned that.
But benefit the
Now,
vegetables.
with the kale, I have to tell you how I don't prepare this. I don't cook. The way my wife prepares this as a dietitian and diabetes educator, she bakes it with virgin olive oil.
Right.
And it is so delectable with a little bit of salt on there. It is amazing.
Right.
How do you prepare it?
That's the one way. That's the kale chips.
Okay.
I just wash it and chop it and add some Clemson blue cheese. And a little bit of nuts because it provides the omega-3 and all the essential fatty acids, and then add some lemon juice and olive oil. I just eat it with blueberry or anything I want.
Excellent.
You can mix this with anything you want.
Well, I have been speaking to Dr. Dil Thavaraja. She works with pulse crops at Clemson University, and she is interested in biofortification of vegetables, not only the two we just discussed here, but several others. And also, I've been enjoying the programs that she has instituted in a number of our schools, engaging students in growing vegetables. But that is a matter for another day. I do want to thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your research as well as your expertise with us today.
Thank you very much.
Jeff, that was a lot of fun. And after this broadcast, I'm going to finish the rest of that delicious lentil dish. I just wanted folks to know who are commenting on Facebook that the recipe is out there. For those of you who cook, Dr. Adelberg, that recipe is for you. I also want to thank the many comments that we have here. Anita from Florence, she's a regular viewer of Clemson Extension Live. Thank you so much for your comments. And this has been a lot of fun, Jeff. And when we began this program, as you take a look at those comments there, we were talking about the healing power of plants, but specifically we're talking about this 8th annual conference of the American Council for Medicinally Active Plants, which will be held at Clemson University from June 20th to 23rd. You're one of the co-hosts of this conference. Your closing remarks regarding this conference at the end of June.
Yeah, the importance of these conferences is it allows scientists active in the field to talk to one another and to learn from one another so that we can put together interdisciplinary approaches to these challenges, to these opportunities. These meetings are open to the public, but the talks are certainly technical in nature. If it's something that you do have a deep interest in, the information on the website, the information on Facebook, again, is available. And so please do look at the program, look at the registration information. We'd be happy if you chose to come and join us.
Wonderful, Jeff. I've had so much fun this afternoon. I do want to thank Dr. Jeff Adelberg, Dr. Mark Hammond, Dr. Dil Thavaraja for their contributions of expertise and time. And many thanks to the entire crew behind the scenes, the two gentlemen here behind cameras, the folks in the booth. I can't name all of them for fear of leaving out one or two names, so I only could say thank you to them. And to all of you who are watching this show, I hope you live long and prosper with plants. Thanks for watching.